Are you on edge?
Come on.
We live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs bi-monthly on MaximizeU.life and iTunes. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and courageous conversations about pushing boundaries, exploring our rough edges, and walking between the worlds of what is and what is yet to be. Join me, Sandra Bargman, on the edge of every day on MaximizeU.life. Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman, and welcome to the Edge of Every Day, now at MaximizeU.life and streaming on your favorite podcast platforms. Are you a change maker? Do you walk between worlds, between cultures, between systems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, the Edge of Every Day is the place for you. In a nutshell, this podcast is about pushing boundaries and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradox and contradicting identities live in our beliefs and our understandings, both individually and collectively. We live in edgy, challenging times. We cannot keep looking away from the ugly, from the difficult. And silence is no longer an option. Life isn't black or white, it's both. And I want to talk about that. I want to face the tension of paradox, and I want to engage in the hard conversations. I want to explore the rough edges between our light-filled brilliance and our dark, shadowy corners. Because the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same, and that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So, thanks for tuning in. Today, we are doing things a bit differently. In today's episode, we are putting the spotlight on yours truly, on moi. Yes, me. Yay. You may recall that I am a contributing author to the 2022 best-selling book, On the Shoulders of Mighty Women by Lesley Michaels. In 2021, Lesley asked 5 women, me included, to contribute, and she gave us absolute carte blanche on our choice of topic. Lesley herself is a mighty woman upon whose shoulders many women have stood, and I was honored and thrilled to be asked. When the book came out, I had Lesley on as a guest on the Edge of Everyday podcast, and you can hear that interview on my YouTube channel, Sandra Bargman on the Edge of Everyday. So today I will be reading from my chapter titled Anger and the Reluctant Leader. And I have asked my good friend, Lynn Durham, to be my wing woman. Amy is a host. She's, oh, yeah, hello. I'm going to brag about you, but hello and welcome to The Edge. And thank you so much for doing this with me today, Amy. It's just always such a pleasure. For our listeners, Amy and I were on a podcast mastermind just before we're doing this, and I get such juice from Amy, and I just lift each other up, and it's really, really exciting. So I'm really happy and glad that you've done this with me. You've come on for this. And you all should know that Amy was a guest on my podcast a few weeks back, and I've been a guest on hers. So you can check that out on your podcast platform of choice and at MaximizeU.life. But let me just quickly read her a bit of her CV. Amy is host of the very popular, very well listened to Create Magic at Work podcast and the author of both the prompt journal, Creating Career Magic, and the activity book, Create Magic at Work. Through her multifaceted endeavors, Amy epitomizes the mission of Create Magic at Work to inspire intentional leadership, innovative strategies, and a culture of collaboration, transforming workplaces into thriving environments where magic is not merely a concept, but a tangible reality. Oh, again, welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Sandra. I'm just really appreciative that I'm here today. I think is the word I will use. And I really do believe in that concept of that magic can be a tangible reality. And I think we felt it there. And as you mentioned in our last podcast mastermind meeting, as we move into this new magical space. So
Yeah.
I'm really appreciative to be here. Yeah.
Oh, it's so great to have you. And I have to say, Amy encouraged me to do this reading, to dive in and read from the book. We're going to do this in 2 episodes. So I'm just going to say I've lit a wonderful candle for my friend Lesley Michaels. I do need to share that Lesley sadly and shockingly passed away in May of 2023. She was a 20-year dear friend of mine, and I feel her with me right now. I hope that she would be thrilled to know that I was reading my contribution to her incredible book for you all today. So,
yeah, what a way to honor her. Yeah.
Oh, totally. And it just, she was a mighty woman upon whom I and many other women stood, on whose shoulders we stood. So I'm going to dive in, folks. Here we go. My chapter is called Anger and the Reluctant Leader by Sandra Bargman. I was recently talking with a friend who asked me about taking over the leadership of a group to which we both belonged. I told him that he should take over the role. We both laughed a lot during this conversation, and I accused him of being a fellow reluctant leader. The moment that phrase rolled off my lips, the reluctant leader, I was enamored. I loved it, and so did he. Googling it immediately, only to discover it was already a thing. But I wasn't too upset knowing I couldn't lay claim to coining the phrase. I was strangely encouraged that it was already out there, and I wasn't alone. The most unforeseen choice in life can put you on a path full of unforeseen awakening and fulfillment. In the early 90s, I made the strange and jaw-dropping decision to move away from a bustling life as an actor and performer in a bustling metropolitan area to a life in a very remote one. This big city girl with matching big city hair and shoes, and nary a piece of flannel owned, moved from NYC to a 3,000-acre nature preserve and biological research station in a small brigadoon of a town in upstate New York. In a nutshell, I was terribly angry at life and needed some quietude, which I got in spades with my shocking move, landing in a small cabin in the woods, smaller than my New York City apartment, resplendent with a wood stove and a composting toilet, dubbed unironically the throne. I'd say it was for my love of my then boyfriend that fueled my monumental leap, but I'd be lying. Our little cabin on the preserve was nestled by a huge pond with a path around it that I would walk, sometimes with my love, and more often alone. The woods around the pond intrigued me as I walked through 3 distinctly different habitats. One, a young forest, Small trees with lush undergrowth, swaths of sunlight filtering through. The second, more mature, a bit darker. Finally, a hemlock forest, majestic, formidable, and magical. It always seemed as if a wood nymph or nature fairy would be peeking up from one of the gnarled roots. One night I had a dream about the hemlock forest. In this dream, it was nighttime with a bright full moon as I started down that path. When at last I got to the hemlocks, moonlight was dappling down through the branches and everything was alive with an expectant quality. In the embrace of the hemlock forest, I began a ritual. I searched for a spot in which to lie between some jutting roots, and when I found it, I lay back, resting my head in a base crook of a tree. Immediately, my body began to tingle from head to toe. My breathing became rhythmic, and an inner pulsing began in my heart region and slowly grew more persistent, filling my entire body. Anticipatedly, I started to split open. With no surprise on my behalf, my body simply opened up in a long line from my chin to my pelvis. As I opened, a bright white light came shining out straight up into the trees, and from within, another me sat up, as if sleeping, and was only now awakened. This new me was iridescent, sparkling with light. She looked around and finally stood up, stepping out onto the forest floor, turned to look down at the old me, still cradled in the hemlock roots. Knowingly, the old me smiled up at the new me and slowly began to close herself back up as the new me bent down and picked her up, hugging the old me to herself, and began to walk slowly in the moonlight through the hemlock to the edge of the pond. This new me walked. As this new me walked, the old me that she was carrying began to crumble and dissolve to dust, floating out across the sparkling moonlit water. It was with Mother Nature that I began to howl with some real power, and for the first time in my life, I could begin to face my anger and my rebellion. Clearly, my subconscious, with this epic, mystical event, was ready to look at my anger and transformation. But was I? Acknowledgement was the beginning. I had much more of this work to do, but this was the first step. Why was I so angry? About what? And with whom? Why are any women in the world angry? Any woman on the planet can agree that there is a tidal wave of women's rage. I have only to mention sex trafficking, genital mutilation, and the hashtag #MeToo movement to conjure collective deep rage. On a less dramatic and more universal level, gender inequality in society and in the workplace are core places to experience our anger. Studies suggest that there are some common roots to anger for women, most notably our feelings of powerlessness and injustice. Women are paid less. They are not as valued in the workplace. And when they hit glass ceilings, it's very hard for them to earn more. This imbalance continues into the domestic arena. When a woman is working and she comes home from work, she feels she must do much more than the man does. When it comes to child rearing, women again are far more responsible than men. A lot of women do not feel listened to, they don't feel valued, they don't feel appreciated, and they don't feel supported. Young girls and women learn early, most notably from their mothers, that there are penalties for displaying anger. Why do we learn as girls to ignore those feelings? I came into this world with the belief, the knowing, that I was here on earth to contribute to life. My mother told me when I was around the age of 3, I walked into the kitchen with my hands on my hips, and I announced to her that I was here on a mission. I knew I had something to say. I'm sure you knew you did as well. But also, I was to learn the well-known and demoralizing story of too much, too loud, too bossy, too self-confident, too sensitive, too needy, too pushy, too crazy. For the record, I have been called all of these. I am all of these, according to those in my circles for whom my exuberance for life and my engagement in society has triggered. And in response, I have twisted myself into multiple incarnations to fit in and be accepted. So much so that I have lost my voice, lost my self-respect, and felt myself the victim, not only by those I perceive have kept me down, but by myself. I was raised by parents who came of age in the 50s, when girls were sugar and spice and everything nice. My parents were the quintessential good parents. The good daughter married the good son, prone to following the rules, sidestepping confrontation, and fitting into suburbia. My mother was my best friend and greatest fan, and I lived her unrequited dream of performing. My father, angry at his own parents, tossed aside his natural rebel spirit for parenthood and took his anger out on my burgeoning creative thinking and preternatural ability to communicate. It was all there in my DNA. The good girl and the angry rebel. My anger. In her powerhouse book, Rage Becomes Her, Soraya Shamali said, quote, "There is not a woman alive who does not understand that women's anger is openly reviled," end quote. By the time she was a young adult, Shamali had developed the firm belief that she was not someone who experienced anger. She didn't identify feelings of anger in herself at all. How many of us can relate to that? As the perpetual optimist, one who walked through the world with a large, enthusiastic life force as a child and a young adult, I certainly can. When I was 9 years old, my parents moved us to their hometown of Pittsburgh, and I started my new elementary school 2 days after we arrived. My first day began well. I enjoyed the curiosity of the other school children toward me. After lunch, we had a half hour of playtime outside. There was a large parking lot abutting the large baseball field. This particular day, there was a game of keep-away going on with 2 teams. I meandered across the concrete to the field, longing to join. Would I be asked? You see, the game was being played by boys only. Turns out they were as curious about me as I was eager to play. And finally, I was put onto one of the teams. It didn't take long for them to see that I was a fast runner. So, of course, the ball was given to me and I was off. No one could catch me. Turns out my running caught the attention of the girls back on the concrete, and some of them came over to watch, along with some of the boys, huffing and puffing. The game came to a stop, and I could feel the admiration of the boys, some looking down and dirt kicking. And then the bell rang, the spell was broken, and we were back in class. The next day couldn't come fast enough. Eager to play again, I got outside to the pavement. I heard my name being called. Sandy, Sandy. It was coming from the other side of the pavement. Then I saw a line of girls all holding hands, walking across the pavement, and I could hear them all shouting my name. My heart skipped a beat with surprised happiness. As I ran to get closer, my heart sunk. We hate Sandy. We hate Sandy. The entire line of girls in unison chanted over and over. It wasn't the boys with whom I had played. No, I had their admiration, however begrudgingly. It was the girls who organized, eager for a takedown, competitive and cool. Lesson learned. Being my full self, my proud, athletic, playful, and powerful self did not bring support, acceptance, and celebration, but rather jealousy, alienation, and non-communication. I share this early event that had such a breathtaking effect on me simply because it illustrates what we as women face over and over again from other women throughout our lives and careers, from those whom we would wish the most support. And I will end the reading at that point, and we will pick up in our next episode and continue. But now I thank you, Amy. We're going to get into a little conversation. There's just so much to unpack in all of that.
Yeah. Thank you for writing that. And thank you for sharing that with the world. I'm curious, when Lesley said you could write about anything, how did this come up that you were going to write about anger and the reluctant leader?
That's a great question. I well, anger is kind of a theme for me. I crack a joke. I get very sassy about anger, how I walk through the world. And I've said this many times in many different circles in many different places, that I walk through the world with more than a modicum of anger. I am it's really a theme for me. I notice that it is triggered a lot. I am a rebellious spirit, and I do not take well to authority. I am not hierarchical, which you and I have talked about on your podcast, and it's very much part of my leadership, non-hierarchy, which is not to say that I can't follow, the structures that are in place. But yeah, and as a female, I had a bit of a rough time with my own father. There was competition for my mom between my dad and I. So he was pretty, overall great father. Let me lead with that. But he was extremely heavy-handed with me. And there was a lot of squelching of creative thinking, and, that really caused a lot of anger. And there, I have since, read studies about the epigenetics, how things are passed down in cellularly, from generation to generation through the umbilical cord, the cellular emotions that are passed down generationally. And so I think about the anger that I've inherited. I don't know that my mom was particularly an angry person, but I think that was the times that she was in. So she is of that ilk of maybe not being put in touch with her anger. But I do believe that my grandmothers, particularly my father's mother, had a lot of anger. So I wonder about that. So to answer your question, it just sort of, the second she asked me, I was like, oh, I have to write about anger. That seems to be my theme. And
Mhm.
and The Reluctant Leader came out right around that time. And also it's just when I was starting the podcast. And so this plays into I was just starting the podcast, and so I was really looking for topics that were in alignment with things that I could write about. So that's why leadership
Yeah.
and understanding my leadership style and
Mhm.
how anger plays into that.
I think it's interesting that you reference your grandmother's rage and an awareness that somehow that may be passed down generationally. You remind me of Dr. Angelise Arian, and also healing generational trauma, right?
Yes.
And she says all of our ancestors are waiting to say, are you going to be the one?
Yeah.
Are you going to be the one?
One that transforms this.
Yeah. And she says, you are the one, right? And it seems to me, I just want to acknowledge this, that you've answered the call. And this is really cool that like we all get to sit and hear you read, because it's like a front row seat to an amazing performer. So I just want to edify you in that way. Um, so yeah, I want to give you that feedback. I also want to hear.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You deserve it. It's just so powerful that we can visualize all of our ancestors saying, is this one going to be the one? Is this one going to be the one? And it's like, you are the one. You just have to answer the call, right? We all are the one. Um, I'm also really moved by your voice and your storytelling ability. So it's no surprise to me that you're a storytelling coach for leaders, to have that human being humans with each other and hearing this story. So thank you for sharing that gift and the way that you do it. But I want to talk a little bit about your experience with the tree in the woods.
Mm.
How would you, I mean, I hate to put it in a box, if you will, but would you classify or characterize that as a spiritual awakening
Oh,
moment?
totally. Oh, totally. Totally. That I had that dream
Mhm.
that that I mean, truly, I've said this many different platforms, that my time when I got out of the city and plopped down in the woods, it was like the greatest thing ever for me, that I really got in touch with the priestess, the internal priestess, nature oriented pagan energy that is so, is so of me, the woman who runs with the wolves, the mythologist, the intuitive, the magical being. So it was and I wouldn't say that it was an awakening, in that like like, oh, I'm spiritual now, because I've been plugged into that since I popped out of the womb. But for there was I knew that the old me, there was something new happening. And I knew it was because I had said yes to coming to live at this place and to immerse myself there. I knew it. So yeah, it was very clear. And I can
Mm.
see that dream as clear as crystal today. And that was 30 years ago, 31 years ago.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by these peak experiences that we can have spiritually. Um, some people, some spiritual leaders, I mean, you're obviously a spiritual leader, um, would classify them as peak experiences, these moments of awe and wonder, and this experience of being just an expanded sense, right? And also a feeling of timelessness a little bit.
Mm.
One thing about this experience, that also in these peak experiences, are that they're temporary, right? Because we come back to
Quote
here.
unquote real life.
Yeah, yeah. I call it the 3D.
Yeah. Back in the 3D. The edge of every day. The
But
polarization of life.
But we also come back with a shift. And the shift that you came back with was like, I'm grieving and letting go
Yeah.
of the old me, and I'm moving forward with this new me.
Yeah.
And somehow in that, there was this awareness around anger.
Mm. Yes.
And this awareness with women and anger.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, I've wanted to ask you this ever since reading that chapter.
Mm.
And if you don't have to get into this if you don't want to, but can you again talk about the penalties that women face when displaying anger?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I would say run, don't walk to get Soraya Shamali's book. I mean, to read that book, whoa. It's really, it's just filled with data and filled with stories. It's fantastic. Um, in our society, and I actually get into this later, that I couldn't even conjure. So in our next episode, I talk about when I discovered I couldn't conjure my own anger. Like I was so disconnected from my anger. I was such a good girl. I was such a people pleaser. I, and that's how women are socialized in our society, in a patriarchal society. Men are uplifted and celebrated for anger is like really macho, and it's a great thing. But anger in a woman is reviled. She is pushy and nagging, and all, she should be kind and she should be nurturing. Not
And
kind,
smile.
she should be nice and small. Exactly. She should be nice. I often talk about the difference between kind and nice. Um, and so it gets shut down. And we are, just for our own safety, often we've got to uh, make sure to police our tone and how we relay information and not express anger, to it in some extreme cases to even survive. um
Mhm.
so it's little girls are told to get along, little boys are told to conquer, and it's just socialized out of the gate. Be nice, be nice.
Mhm.
And you're a shrew if you speak your mind. I have this great story. This is a perfect story for this moment. So I had a Jehovah Witness come to my house in upstate New York, my home in the Catskill Mountains, and it's kind of fun for me when this happens. That because I'm an interfaith minister, so they have no idea what's going to meet them at the door. They think maybe they're going to talk to somebody, and I get into all kinds of schools of thought on spirituality and what do you think about this and da, 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 and I ask them for quotes and we just get into it and so anyway, this guy, he comes up and he's in a little minivan and I can see that there's a woman sitting in the van. It's parked about 20 feet away and he gets into it. We get into it. And finally, when we're talking and I'm keeping a very, very, like right now, I'm informed and I'm just sort of rattling things off and asking questions, but I have a firm tone. And he says to me, "You sound really angry." And I was like, oh, I said, this tracks really well. The fact that I disagree with you, that I am not agreeing with you, everything out of your mouth, the fact that I am saying that I disagree in a very firm, but not loud, not apologetic tone. I am not being breathy or I am just being me. That comes off as angry to you. I said, this tracks really well. I said, no, I'm not angry talking with you. I think in general, I think every woman on the planet is angry about having to deal with this sort of thing. I said, I bet you the woman sitting in your van right now is internally angry. And you know, so it was like, all right, I think we might be done here. I think I need to go, you know, and you know, just on about the Bible and the this and the that. And so, and I, of course, could come back with, do you know when you know, the how often the Bible was rewritten? And do you know, in you know, 400 years after it was written, that they had they voted on, you know, whether or not God was actually, Jesus was actually God. I mean, do you know any of these things? Of course he didn't. And so, you know, so in that sense, it's always kind of fun, but it's a quirky little thing for me. But yeah, so it was, you know, it just right there in a nutshell, it just showed up that I am perceived as angry, and it's repulsive when I am just sharing my wisdom and my knowledge and not agreeing with you.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had this discussion just as friends offline, where with women, passion is being misconstrued for anger.
Oh yeah, I have that in this chapter.
Yeah. Like
Passionate.
oh,
No, I'm passionate.
yeah, we're just passionate about this. And like, it's like we have a right to be passionate, to share our thoughts. Also, I would have enjoyed being a fly on the wall to hearing you being mansplained the Bible. That would have been
Yes.
that would have been fun for me.
Excuse me, can we record our conversation? Are you down with that?
I want to move to this beautiful story that you shared, that you vulnerably shared about your experience on the playground.
Mm.
And before I get into that, I want to ask everyone listening to, especially when you tune into the next section as well, to really be appreciative and just really listen to Sandra and her voice and how she storytells. It's so incredible and it's so amazing. And it's a big part of how you help other people do that for themselves. So I was just sitting here like, oh my gosh, I could never read a story like that. But then I was like, well, if I ask Sandra for help, I could, and I could give my presentation in Indiana next week, like 20 times more better. So I want to, because it truly is like a huge thing right now of connecting human to human.
Yeah.
So to this story on the playground, when you discovered what my notes say is the betrayal of women.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's in your writing, but that's what I got from it. And you also talk about a lot in your writing about the betrayal of women to women. You talked about female genital mutilation. One of my favorite artists is Tori Amos, and she has a song about that, about I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. It's from the 90s. It's called The Cornflake Girl. And her and her friend, they kind of nicknamed these women that betray other women, that hold the women down to have that done, cornflake girls, like the ones that just go along with everything. And she says, I don't want to be a cornflake girl. I want to be a raisin girl. I'm a raisin girl. I'm on the raisin squad.
I love it.
Yeah. So where do you think that comes from? Deepest question ever.
Yeah, right. You. Well, I think internalized misogyny is pretty profound. I think that it is so baked into our systems that we just learn it from the time we can walk and talk and pay attention. I don't think that cruelty and competition is the go-to in with women who haven't internalized misogyny. But I think that we're taught to push, you know, we see the little boys getting, you know, raised up for being competitive, and the little girls being put down. So of course they're going to behave in ways like that. I think the big shift that we're seeing in the leadership landscape right now is women are becoming aware that they have, I mean, they may not be aware of the phrase internalized misogyny, but they are becoming aware that they do not need to act like a man to be a leader. They do not need to be competitive and hierarchical and and cruel and manipulative, which is not to say all men are cruel and manipulative, but we understand what we're talking about here. And I think the nurturing aspect of leadership is coming to the forefront. And I think enough women are coming clean with each other that that's what they want. That's what they want in the workplace. That's what they want in their lives. And I, I just sang in a show about raising money about um, for democracy and democratic candidates. And I sang a song and I set it up with a story about my sister and Trump women and needing to understand that they too are our sisters and that I can't stay confused about those choices. I have to step into empathy and I have to step into the courage to be open-hearted with that mentality and to continue to help them to awaken to their natural nurturance and their natural um, empathy, and that they don't, this is not working for them and it's not working for the men in their lives either. Um, so I don't know if that's really answering your question, but those are my thoughts, my musings.
Yeah, I hear you saying it's kind of ingrained into what our consciousness is right now in our lives here on Earth.
And
I
it's
think,
really coming out to the forefront, I think, in this extreme polarization. I think, as uncomfortable as that is, people are noticing, they're getting it. I really
yeah.
believe that.
And to what you said about women getting it and wanting to lead in a different way than it's been done before. I feel that in the energetic consciousness of the workplace, it's like, oh, I made it to the quote unquote number one spot. Whoever would have made it to that spot before, let's say it's C-suite, they would have done it just like it was done before. This is how you do it. This is how before, this is the system we're in. Well, now it's like there's all these conversations and these voices rising up because of your writing, because of the work we do. That's like, well, maybe you can do it different now
Yeah.
because you're there. And also this betrayal of women, there is that ingrained in us, this sense of scarcity, like there's not enough seats for everyone.
Yeah.
And so you know, that's why we hear these stories,
Sure.
because we have this, that's my musing on it. We have this ingrained in us that, well, there's not enough room for you because
Right.
I'm doing this.
Right.
I'm already here. And there's 50 men and one of me. There's no way there could be another room for Sandra, another woman. And it's
Yeah.
it's this ingrained in our unconscious. So as long as we have these conversations and we're unraveling that with the help of your storytelling and writing, I think we can really have some beautiful elevation in our consciousness,
Mm.
where we are creating systems and worlds and environments that are healing rather than destroying.
Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Well, Amy Lynn, I can't thank you enough for coming on and speaking with me, asking questions, just holding space so beautifully around this reading, and your kind words and upliftment really means the world to me. Thank you.
Again, I am just grateful to be here. So I can't wait to dive into the next part.
Yes. Well, on that note, you can find Amy Lynn Durham. Please let our listeners know where they can find you.
createmagicatwork.net. All
Yes.
things are there. And of course, LinkedIn, I'm in that bringing magic to the corporate space. So find me on LinkedIn under Amy Lynn Durham.
Fabulous. And her fabulous podcast again, Create Magic at Work, on your favorite podcast platforms. And I referenced my YouTube channel, Sandra on the Edge of Every Day, which has all 56 of my episodes when I was at talkradio.nyc. And now, of course, I'm at maximizeyou.life and on all of your podcast platforms of choice as well. So, and you can find me as well on LinkedIn. I'm all over socials. So go to at Sandra Bargman and like me on Insta and all of those things. And Amy, would you be kind enough to read that wonderful Mary Oliver poem? Do you have that at your fingertips?
Actually do.
Excellent. I'd love to hear that before I do a final closeout.
Okay. This is an excerpt from one of Mary Oliver's poems. I don't know if I can follow you in a reading, but I'll try.
Oh, gee.
Now the women are gathering in smoke-filled rooms, rough as politicians, scrappy as club fighters. And should anyone be surprised if sometimes when the white moon rises, women want to lash out with a cutting edge?
Yum. It's really potent.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, do I love Mary Oliver. Thank you for that. Much to muse on with all of this, much to think about. And I thank you again. And listeners, remember, at the end of the day, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. Until we speak again, take good care.